Hey everybody, Hoosier Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking about episode 19 of season 2 of Ultimate Spider-Man called Guardians of the Galaxy. And this is another team-up episode for Spider-Man with, appropriately enough, Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, I admit, the cosmic side of the Marvel Universe is not my strongest subject. But thanks to some recent comics the last couple of years that were extremely well received, the Guardians have really just been moving up and up in profile in the Marvel Universe. I'm only a little bit familiar with what's going on with there, so I don't really claim to know these characters terribly well. I think Drax the Destroyer is the only one I'm really familiar with, because I've read a few issues of his a miniseries he had a couple of years ago. But the long and the short of it is, as I said, the Guardians had some comics the last couple of years that were really well received. They have a live action movie that's in production right now. It's been in production for like about 3 weeks, and they've got some really exciting people like Karen Gillan from Doctor Who, Michael Rooker from The Walking Dead is in it, Dave Bautista, Benicio del Toro is in it. I mean, there are just a lot of really good actors in this movie. There's a lot of characters from the cosmic side of the Marvel Universe. Everybody we see here, we see some other folks like Yondu. I believe Ronan the Accuser is in there. He's a favorite of mine from the cosmic side of the universe. The Collector. And there was some a Comic-Con just this past weekend. I'm guessing the timing of this episode is no coincidence. They released some concept art for the characters, and wow, folks, I gotta say, everything I've been hearing has made me really excited to see this Guardians of the Galaxy live-action movie that's coming out, I believe, next summer. And this episode, it just adds to that. Now, it's true, the Guardians as characters are not terribly well fleshed out. But again, this is ultimately Spider-Man's show, and this is an episode that's really about his relationship with Nova. The Guardians are just basically guest stars. Now, again, I really do wish they'd sort of got a little bit more into the characters. Rocket Raccoon is the only one who really comes across strong in terms of personality. But still, this was, just at the end of the day, a fun episode. It was a really cool, action romp with Spider-Man. It's always interesting to see Spidey thrown in these situations where he's just completely out of his element, like when he has to deal with magic, or in this case, when he has to deal with cosmic stuff. But Spider-Man's really at his strongest when he is in over his head. There was Joe Kelly, one of the guys who's very well received writer on Spider-Man, and one of the guys from Man of Action. I believe it was him that one time said that Spider-Man is like Daffy Duck in that he's funny when he's losing, and actually he said that Daredevil is kind of like Bugs Bunny and that he's funny that he's winning. And here we really see a nice example of that. As I said, Spidey is out of his element, but he's still bringing the funny. He's still really bringing the heroic moments when he decides to turn around and like, hey, I'm just gonna go over there and start kicking these bad guys' butts. And as I said, this is an episode that really is mostly about his relationship with Nova. And I gotta say, if you've been watching my reviews of this show from the beginning, Nova has pretty much been my least favorite member of the Amazing Friends. He's the most childish, he's the most annoying, and out of everybody, he seems to be the one that is least likely to learn anything, and frankly, he comes across as pretty dumb in a lot of episodes. Here, we really kind of get some much needed depth. We find out more about his past, that he has this other team, and of course, he shows some extreme heroism in basically, saving the Earth. It actually reminds me of that Teen Titans episode from a few years back where we learned about Beast Boy's past with the Doom Patrol, and we see the normally very comedic character of Beast Boy. We see him being very disciplined, almost like a military kind of character, and that was really cool because you just never expected a character like Beast Boy to come from a place like that. And here we see this really unexpected side to Nova. We see him more serious. We see him vastly more competent. We see him being humble. I mean, look, most of the time Nova's going around bragging about how great he is. Put him with the Guardians. Put him next to his mentor, Rocket Raccoon, and suddenly he's very level-headed. He's steady. He's willing to take the advice of other people without question. I mean, wow, really? This is a real 180, but this episode makes it make complete sense. So yeah, I mean that's just really strong storytelling. I'm very impressed with this episode. But anyway, let's just kind of get into some of the little details here. First of all, at the very beginning of the game, the character in the video game that Peter and Alex are playing is referred to as Tana Nile. Now, she's an actual character from the Marvel Universe. I remember her from. She was actually a supporting character for a while in the Generation X comics from the X-Men series. And man, you guys gotta understand, I love Generation X. That and the similar series from Image at the time called Gen 13, those were my two absolute favorite series of the entire 1990s. I mean, I even got a letter printed in an issue of Generation X, and I got more than one letter printed over in Gen 13. So, seeing her pop up, that was a real throwback. The part of me that's still 16 years old, that's very cool to that aspect of me. Now, Tana Nile, I don't really remember a whole lot about what was going on with her. She was a very minor supporting character, and only for a little while. And I don't think that they ever really got into what was going on with her terribly well in the comics. The 90s were a very up and down time for the X-Men series. And of course, if you recall that time, you understand that the issues that people had with Generation X's writer at the time, Scott Lobdell. Although, to be completely fair in retrospect, I think that guy got a lot of grief he didn't deserve. But we're going to not get into that for clarity's sake for the folks who are just here for the TV show. Now, anyway, another little nod. One thing that I did get a kick out of was at the very beginning when Alex mentions that Rocket Raccoon is his mentor, and we get to see an obvious nod to Luke's training with Yoda from the Star Wars movies, and that's very well done. It's been a little while since we saw a Star Wars shout out on Ultimate Spider-Man, but here they really picked and chose well with what they did. Let me see here. Now we see the aliens who are referred to as the Chitauri. Now, of course, this is the name that was given to the Skrulls in the Ultimate Universe, and of course the name used in the Avengers movie. And here the appearance of the Skrulls is obviously based on their appearance in Avengers. And yeah, if you're somebody who's been reading the comics for as long as I have, you might have some mixed feelings about such a radical departure from the traditional look of the Skrulls, but also keep in mind the traditional look of the Skrulls is bumpy-chinned green aliens in purple pajamas. So, yeah, I really can't fault the show and the movies for kind of going in a slightly less 60s direction. And, okay, the main, we also see the villain Korvac, and long story short, Korvac is a cosmic character most strongly associated with the Avengers. In fact, one of the most famous Avengers stories of all time is called the Korvac Saga, which is basically the Avengers versus Korvac. And I'm not super familiar with him as a character, but I know that he's really, really nothing like this. I mean, Korvac in the comics is basically this ordinary Earth guy, if I'm remembering correctly, who's given absolutely godlike powers, and it's, how do you deal with just an ordinary man turned into a god, is what the Avengers had to deal with. And here he just comes across very much as your sort of standard space dictator. I really think that they could have probably dusted off some other character from the Marvel Universe and used him instead. Actually, I would have gotten an enormous kick out of it if they'd used Deathbird from the X-Men comics, but Looks like it wasn't meant to be. Honestly, the only really serious complaint I have about this episode is at the very end where Spider-Man's spider sense is somehow able to sense Nova. Now, I've really never seen spider sense work like that. I mean, it's supposed to be a danger sense, and okay, maybe there's an example of it doing something like this in the comics. I mean, Spidey's been around for about 50 years. You have to figure that there's bound to have been an inconsistency or two in the use of his powers in all that time. So, yeah, I'm really not. I'm not going to make a huge deal about that, but it's something that crossed my mind while I was watching this episode, so in my duty as a reviewer, I felt the need to bring it to your attention. But anyway, getting back to it, as I said, this episode is really nicely well written. The interplay between Spider-Man and Nova is done really well. Nova is given some much needed depth. I mean, this is really something that for his character has been long overdue. The Guardians of the Galaxy, as I said, we don't really get the best look of them as a character, with the exception of Rocket Raccoon, but they are certainly very fun guest stars. They're very interesting guest stars. I certainly would like them to be thrilled if they were to come back. And, this episode does what it's really meant to do, which is get me even more pumped up to see the Guardians of the Galaxy movie next year. And in that, it succeeds admirably. In fact, I'm going to go later. I'm going to go look around and see if maybe I can go about getting my hands on some of the Guardians of the Galaxy comics collections. Like I said, I'm really excited to see these characters. And with that said, folks, we are going to call it here. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi. Till next time, take care and have a good one.